I'll introduce Mark. Mark Tidsworth is, I'm going to say church consultant because I feel like that is the most descriptive way, but you're also an author and a pastor. And you do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You've been a counselor. And you've got several books that we have explored at various levels. Farming Church, we did a whole wet workshop on at Trinity back in 2018. And then Shift, he talked about at the Leadership Focus event in 2018 at Kernersville, Moravian. And he's got a new project going, and then I'm sure he'll tell us about. But if you want to just talk a little bit at Mark, and then maybe we can open it up for some conversation, I will introduce you to Riddick. He knows everybody else, but Riddick are you associate professor of something at Moravian Seminary? What are you? A pastoral ministry. Yes. No, you're not. Your audio's not working. So you fix that. He teaches preachers how to be preachers at Moravian Seminary, which is in Bethlehem. So we have a nice little, a geographical spread here.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I'll let you take it away, Mark.
All right, great. Well, great to see you all. And thank you for letting me join you for some conversation together. Looks like Riddick went off and he's going to come back on, I bet, to get his sound going. So here's a possibility, what we could do. I have 4 PowerPoint slides that I think might help us consider some things that could jumpstart our conversation. So if it's okay with you all, I would just show those 4 and then we can put them away and talk from there. Sound all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ruth, would you make me co-host so I can, maybe you already did?
You should be able to.
Okay. You all see a different screen?
Yes. Umbrellas.
Okay. Great. Well, here are the 4 slides I wanted to show you.
Yeah.
Just contexting first, and let me just read through these and make a comment on each one, and we'll go to the next slide. By the way, during this time, I wrote a book called ReShape, Emerging Church Practice in a Volatile World. So that's where this comes from, and we're using the phrase emerging church practice rather than best practices, because since it's so new, we've not had time for best practices to rise up. It's more like the practices that are effective are rising from the context, are rising from the field. They're being created as we speak, so to speak. So it's not been going on long enough to have best practices for churches. Instead, it's more what's working, what's helpful. And it's also very contextual depending on your location. So 3 just insights. This is new territory and it's lasting longer than we expected. So do you all remember back in March when we thought, well, we'll go online for about 3 weeks, probably, maybe a month. If it really stretches out, we'll go online. And lo and behold, here we are in September, and it's still around. So it is new territory, and it certainly has lasted longer than any of us thought it would. And in addition to that, this is just one of the volatile events. Have you seen the news about California and the fires that are raging there right now? I saw this morning that they had over the weekend the highest temperature Los Angeles County has ever had, 121 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the fires are covering more acreage than they ever have before. So indicators that the climate is changing. And so and then the hurricanes that are happening that affect us more on this side of the US. So all that to say, volatile events are becoming more frequent and probably more the norm rather than the exception as we move into the future. And then the third insight I would mention is our churches really are adapting in remarkable ways. we've seen more change in a positive way. We've seen more adaptation and innovation, let's put it that way, in the last 6 months than we've seen in the 10 years before that. Remember when churches thought we could never do live stream our services, or we could never do online worship, or we could never do a Bible study by Zoom video conference. All of that's just too complex and we could never do that, or cost too much money, or there were just reasons. We were afraid of the technology or whatever. And then lo and behold, we did it in like a week. We learned how to do it in a week, and then we were online. So there's been remarkable innovation and adaptation and perseverance as well. So we need to give ourselves credit for that. And then let me put up some other things here. And this is a paradoxical slide, you might say. And let me talk about these and then just let you all respond, see what you think. In listening to lots of churches and denominations and pastors, church staff people, lay leaders, on the left side, it seems like there's really this strong longing for familiarity, for the normal, that all of us are experiencing that, along with the strong longing for reconnection and for safety and security. Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs from long ago in undergraduate or seminary? And you have the pyramid. You start off with the basic physiological needs like food, water, and then you move to safety and security. A lot of people are struggling with just the safety and security needs right now. So this is relevant to what Ruth was saying, that it's difficult for people to consider what might be the long-term effects of this, or what might our church be called to do long-term given everything, because they're so immersed in the immediate right now, just finding employment or taking care of our kids and having them in school, or, you know, we're living so much as right now. It's difficult to look on down, or have the capacity to look on down the road. So there's this longing for familiarity, reconnection, safety, and security. And then, do you have any people like this in your church who are denying the reality of the situation, and who, whatever they think about the coronavirus, they just don't think it's a big deal, and that if it went away tomorrow, everything will go back to normal and we'll just go on as if nothing ever happened? So that's part of the mix. And then there are people fearing church demise or death. There might be some churches who don't make it out of this, who are already pretty vulnerable, and maybe this was a tipping point for them. But others who will make it out of this, but fear permeates their culture these days as a church. And then just spiritual malaise or depression. That's the feeling or the condition of some churches. So all that's on the left side. On the right side, at the same time, there are lots of people who are very appreciative of their churches right now, the innovation that they're doing and the adaptation. They really appreciate all that's going on, and they don't want to snap back to exactly business as usual. Instead, they see this as a transformation opportunity, like the biggest one that's come along in our lifetimes. Since everything is changing, it's a perfect time to take advantage of the transformation opportunities. And there's a strong desire to take advantage of the mission congruent opportunities that are here. And then excitement about and the engagement with transformation opportunities. There are people in churches who have been invigorated by all this, and some churches who have been invigorated overall by all this. And they're really excited about the opportunities that are there. So all that to say, seems like these are some of the dynamics that are part of the mix right now. So let me be quiet, let you all talk as you see these, and think about your church and or others. There might be others you would add to this, or it might explain some of what's going on in your, just I don't have specific questions. Just where are you going as you see and hear these?
I would just say, yep. This is why I came today. We have been innovating, and it's been stressful but fun. It really has opened some new doors for some people, but getting a lot of pushback right now about, okay, well, that was great. Now we're done with all that. We want things to be normal. I have to go to a board meeting tonight where that's the agenda. And so, yep, yes to all of this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think that a lot of the fear that I hear, and I hear it every week because we're meeting outside in the picnic shelter, and everybody's afraid we're going to be there Christmas Eve, you know, that we'll be cold. And, but the fear I hear is what are we going to do? How are you going to do it? And they want to know answers before we can even begin to answer them. And, you know, last week, North Carolina went to 2.5, phase 2.5, which is a few more people and gatherings. That's what that means. And so I have to start with a conversation, well, you know, we're only in phase 2.5. And I have to put a lot of facts out there. The other thing that I am so grateful for and don't understand is that our church is doing very well right now. We've not had to cut anything because of money. And I thought this would be a disastrous time in terms of giving. And it hasn't been. And in a lot of places, a lot of people I've talked to say that it really hasn't been. In terms of innovation, I just got a backward church. They don't do Zoom. If I do anything, I have to do both and. Because so many of my people will only participate if they can come. And so we're having to do both and I'm really poor at Zoom. So it's hit and miss with me with Zoom. But we are, like, our Bible studies are both and. Our services are not. Our services are all in you know. But there's not been a lot of excitement about innovations over here because we couldn't do them. And so, but that's where we are here.
I'm curious about Riddick with the seminary, and are you teaching online, or what's going on now?
We had, even before COVID started, we had done a lot of our courses or had made a lot of our courses available online. So a lot of us were very used to that. We had several professors, and partly related to the nature of the courses they taught, had really wanted to keep things in person. But we went online probably at the middle of March last year, all online. This semester, we've offered people, if you want to be in person, we try to make that happen, but very few of our students want to be in person. Either, you know, why bother to travel when I can just sit at home and do this? Or I've got, you know, people who are at risk, and I don't want to risk an additional being out around other people and bringing that back home. So we have one class that's meeting in person right now. And it's, I think from a pedagogical standpoint, we lose a little bit, but not much, but it's really affecting the social fabric of the community. And the relationships between faculty and staff, simply because we don't see each other to interact. Everything has to be a Zoom meeting, which adds to the Zoom gloom. So that's our short term. Long term, I'm really excited that we have gone completely. We've offered everything online. To me, it means we can offer our degrees completely online. We still haven't officially gone. We haven't made that step yet. But I think that opens up opens us up to a lot more students for their full degrees, including a lot of Moravians in North Carolina who study at Duke or Wake Forest or at Gordon Conwell or things like that. So my hope is that long term, this is good for the seminary. That remains to be seen.
All right, great.
The one thing I would add, sort of from sort of pastoral perspective, part of my concern on the other side of COVID is how do pastors manage to do the both and? Because I think there's that strong pull. We want everything back exactly the way it was. And then we've been reaching people that we've never been able to reach before, and we want to keep in touch with them. And so, you know, how do we keep pastors from having twice as much work to do all of a sudden?
John, were you going to say something?
We're in a similar situation to what Chris was describing, and we're able to make things work right now. People enjoy the outdoor services, but they're worried about how long will this last? How long can we keep this going? What will Christmas be like? Similar questions to what people have been saying, and they were right on target with what you're saying also. That's where we are.
Okay. Thank you. And Ruth, anything you want to add from you hear from lots of people, is why I would ask, lots of Moravian churches.
Oh, sure. I mean, it is all over the map. I mean, we just have a lot of folks who are enjoying it a little different something. I mean, I think an added benefit, honestly, has been our interprovincial partnerships have grown. I mean, it's just so much easier now because the geography is not a barrier. So we've been able to, you know, we're collaborating with the Northern Province folks on some projects for Advent and Christmas. We're in meetings together. They can join us for our office hours because, right, why not? So, yeah, so it's, I think it's in that way, it's been really enriching and insightful. But also I just think, and as it stretches out, I agree, it becomes lots of things become more of a burden. So, you know, for our agency, we really for us, we were already doing a lot in the cloud. We were already pretty mobile. I have a couple younger staff members who already kind of work sort of really fluidly from wherever. So for us, we just moved right on, which was really helpful because we were able to help churches get on Zoom and get going online very quickly. You know, but as it does stretch out, you know, we are starting to, you know, determine that, you know, some of what we've been doing a lot of was very analog, and that's not what's required anymore. So how do we adapt there too? Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, we do some denominational consulting, and I can remember a lot of that from a few years ago where constituents said, why can't we do more meetings on Zoom? Because we drive 2 hours to a committee meeting and have a 1 hour meeting, then we drive 2 hours home. And they said it knocks a lot of us out of participating. And now I think that will be one of the innovations that will come out of this is we realize there were parts of what we were doing that really can be done online more easily and effectively and conserve resources. And so it will probably be a mix of both coming out of this, but I don't think we'll go back to exactly the way things were because now we have all these skills that we didn't have before and have experienced some of the benefits of it too. So, well, it sounds like these bullet points describe a lot. It's not an exhaustive list, but provide a lot of where people are. So then the leadership task for pastors and lay leaders and seminary leaders is how do we help people move from where they are and churches to move from where they are to where we're going, which is always the leadership question, isn't it? I mean, that's not a new one. It just has new parts to it because of our specific context right now. I'll show you some steps in the ReShape process in a moment, but with these first 3 bullets, longing for familiarity, reconnection, safety, and security, we were hearing pastors struggle with that because they were seeing it as initially as a negative, as a problem, because they were interpreting this as getting in the way of innovation and adaptation, which does appear to be that on the surface. But if we take another look at it and the way it's written here is a longing. And if I could just use myself as an example, the church I'm a part of here in Columbia, South Carolina is not meeting in person, but records the services on Friday and then shows them on YouTube or another venue on Sunday morning. So that's what we're doing right now. I long for being able to see people in person and being able to worship in person. I'll probably turn into a charismatic that first Sunday and run up and down the aisles and say, hey, we get to be in person. This is fantastic. So, you know, with that in mind, these longings are probably just natural and normal when people are going through a highly discombobulating experience, like a crisis that's turned from a crisis, acute stress, into chronic stress. It's a chronic situation at this point. So I think it's normal and natural to desire familiarity and reconnection and safety and security. So rather, when it comes to leadership then, we probably will gain more ground if we can go ahead and address the need underneath these longings. If we can go ahead and spend some time with reconnecting and doing what's familiar the best we can and encouraging safety and security and going there, so to speak, and blessing that and recognizing its normal human need for two reasons. One, it meets a need. It meets a need of our people is the primary one. But the second one is, if we don't do that, it will turn into, those needs will go underground and turn into resistance to change. You all seen this happen before when there are unacknowledged needs in a congregation. Maybe leftover emotional baggage from a conflict that happened some time ago and it's not resolved. You know it's going to pop up in the future if it's not resolved and interfere with progress for the church. So that's the way to look at this. These are normal needs. We need to address them now, need to address them with intentionality so that, using Maslow's hierarchy again, the needs can be met so that people can move up a level and keep moving farther as we go. So I'll show you these steps in just a moment, might help explain that a little bit further. And that helps avoid, on the right side where it says snapback tendencies, will help avoid that. So here are the 5 core church functions that we're using. And we found that lots of people are resonating with this. There might be Moravian language for this already. So for some denominations, they find it in their baptismal vows, what they covenant together to do. But basically, churches generally engage in worship, disciple development. Christian formation is a more traditional phrase for that. Disciple care, we've changed it from pastoral care to disciple care because the focus is on caring for the disciples rather than exactly who delivers the care. Serving neighbors, which is serving in our community, and then managing the assets, which are part of every church. So you might use these 5 core church functions to help your lay leaders, your council, your board, identify what might be our next moves. So here are the 7 key moves for reshaping church. Reconnecting church, debriefing our experience. These first 2 are really to address those longings that I mentioned, reconnecting with one another, debriefing our experience. And in the book, it has just a whole chapter on debriefing experiences. And we found that doing that helps liberate people to free them up to go on to what's next. Let me mention one other thing with reconnecting church. A great activity, I'll stop sharing so I can see you. A great activity for reconnecting is to invite your people into the conversation about what is that which does not change in our faith? Because they feel like everything has changed and nothing is the same. So it's a great time to ask, what is that which does not change? And I would suggest, here's my list of 3, but I would invite you to invite your people into this discussion. But my list of 3 would be our identity. We are disciples of Jesus Christ no matter what, whether we can meet in person or not, or COVID is there or not, or whatever volatile event. Our identity is the same. Our companions, we are church together. With Ruth's sign back there, church is not a building, we are the church, no matter where we are. So that doesn't change, no matter what the circumstances are. And then thirdly, our mission. We are called to join God towards the transformation of the world, towards the kingdom coming to earth as it is in heaven, so to speak. So those 3 aspects of our faith don't change: our identity, our companions, and our mission. So one Christian formation activity we can do with our people is to invite them into that kind of conversation and discussion. What is it for us that does not change, no matter what happens in our circumstances? And this can help them keep their spiritual feet on the ground, to be centered, to be grounded, so to speak, while we're moving through this chronic crisis. And then all this frees us up to do number 3 and 4, sorting our progress. And we have a very simple metaphor we're using with sorting our progress, which is, imagine 3 sorting buckets. Some of you know Harry Potter. You remember, we watched it recently again. You remember the sorting hat when they're sorted into? So I don't know if you want to use that analogy in your church or not, if that'd be helpful or not, but it's that idea, sorting buckets. 3 sorting buckets. Once we get to the place we are spiritually and emotionally freed up enough to then do some sorting, the sorting buckets are, one of them is continue. What is it we started during this time that we may want to continue? Let's place those items in the sorting bucket. For example, we're saying to churches, most churches have 2 campuses right now. You started your 2nd campus during COVID. One is in person and one is online. And most of you are not in your in-person campus right now, your first campus. You're meeting on your 2nd campus. So when the time comes, when you can be in person, do you want to shut down your 2nd campus that you've developed? Or are there people there who could never join you in person? And if so, think about what you want to do with that. So that's something you might put in the continue bucket to consider what you want to do. So that's the continue. The 2nd bucket is the stop bucket. You all know, as church leaders, it's extremely hard to stop activities and programs and traditions that have run their course, so to speak. You ever tried to stop something in the life of the church? It's much easier to start something than it is to stop something. But this provides us the perfect opportunity during COVID. We stopped doing a whole bunch of things that we're not doing right now. And so there are some of those that really have just run their course, and this would be a graceful time to let them die a natural death and not resurrect them again. One way to know that is, if you didn't bring it up, nobody else would bring it up either. When that's the case about certain things, then you know they probably have seen their day and need to, or maybe 2 or 3 people would bring it up, but there's really not enough energy to resurrect that. So this will help with what I think maybe Riddick or somebody mentioned, that on the other side of this, how in the world can we manage doing what we used to do plus what we're starting to do? Part of that is we probably need to just stop doing some things and not start them again. And so having a stop bucket without having to decide right now, and that's how we would use these, is these are sorting buckets. We're not making firm decisions. We are just placing them in buckets right now. And so the stop bucket, we put everything in there that we stopped, that we might not want to restart. We'll decide if we want to or not, but we stop. And then the third is the explore bucket. we may have had some, our holy imaginations have been fired during this time. It's kind of exciting to try new stuff. What other thoughts or possibilities did we identify that we didn't start doing, but we might want to consider? Those would go in the explore bucket. So we don't lose them during this time. We go ahead and put them in the explore bucket. And then later comes a decision-making process, a discernment process about what we're going to do with those. So given our time, let me just mention these couple others and then just let you all respond to that. That's the sorting. Choosing a growth mindset is about helping people get to the exciting part of transformation. Plotting our course is when we make decisions about the sorting that we've done. And that's when we would need to align our structure, which means the pastor's job description needs to change as a result of our reshaping church plan. The lay leadership team needs to change in what it's doing in all of our structures. And then launching ReShape Church. So I'll send Ruth this PowerPoint because I have it here. If it will advance. There it is. Here's a ReShape purpose statement. It's a process rather than just leaving things to chance. Here are some information about it. Here's some introductory videos about it. And then here's my contact information. So I'll send this to Ruth so she can have it if you want it for reference point. Well, thank you for indulging me. I'm obviously very excited about this. And I think, you know, it's really, when we can get ourselves there spiritually and emotionally, it's like the world's greatest transformation opportunity ever in our lifetimes has come our way. And so that's what we hope churches can get to, is they get to the place where they can see it's a renewing of the minds, so to speak, from Scripture, that phrase, renewing of our minds. It's a great opportunity to live into something new as we move forward. The challenge is helping our people get there. All right, so let me be quiet and just let you all respond some or ask some questions or share some examples or where you're seeing this happening or wherever we want to go with our conversation.
I'm really grateful to hear the positive aspect of this, that it's not all bad news. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to really look at reframing from a new point of view. And I think that is, that's what we've been talking about a lot, is imagining church but I'm with you. That's just sort of how I see it. I've always seen these opportunities as times to reframe and find new ways to work. And so I'm really grateful for that presentation point.
Well, thank you. You know, I'm thinking you all, things as simple as Romans 8:28, that God works good from every circumstance. The idea that every circumstance is a Christian formation opportunity. And so this also is a Christian formation opportunity. And the essential question then is, where are you, O God, in this experience? And what's the spiritual development and growth opportunity for us in this? And if we can get our churches there to where we're asking those questions, then it opens up all kinds of doors for us. Seems like John was about to say something, and then Christine was too.
I'm good. Christine can have it. Although I was thinking about how, I remember reading earlier how changes have been coming for churches for a long time, and if nothing else, COVID just sped up this change that's been occurring and forced churches, ones who have been more reluctant to embrace these changes, they've had to embrace them, whether they wanted to or not, and just sped up that process.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for reminding us that everything folks are experiencing, that longing, all of that longing that is very normal. I'm being reminded that I need to listen a little more, affirm that longing, sit with them in that longing a little bit before kind of leading them to progress a little bit. We really launched forward quite well with things we had never tried before, but now it feels like there's definitely a putting on of the brakes, and some people are moving forward, and this is good for so many, but the folks who don't like change, they're just like, you're leaving us in the dust, and we don't know what to do about that. Right now we're complaining a lot because we feel left in the dust. So I need to do a better job of acknowledging that, and I don't know how to help pull them along, but at least I got to sit with them for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe that might be a great discussion for your board is what is it we are hearing from our local body of Christ here? And then what does that mean for us, and how does that inform our leadership? And it may mean that we need to sit together with that and acknowledge the pain and the struggle of all this, and then remind ourselves together of our faith and of that which does not change, and explore how have we been sustained thus far. We have been sustained, and this didn't destroy us, and here we are, and we are still a church. So God's strength is showing up among us somehow. How's that? What is that? And, those faith-oriented conversations.
The division, though, is that, we do have people having those conversations in a setting like this. It's the people who won't come to a setting like this, won't come to worship that doesn't look like they recognize it. That's where the disconnect is, and that's the harshest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties, maybe, and I listened to Carol talk about her church and that they no financial problems, haven't had to take a step back on any of the ministries they're doing. And that tied with what you said earlier, with that for many churches, it's we're just trying to figure out how to survive right now. And so the things we may have been thinking about before COVID, we've sort of put on the back burner. We're just trying to make it through now. And I wonder if there may be like a real whiplash for churches that have been able to figure out some way to sort of just maintain right now, and feel really excited about maintaining. And then when COVID's gone, and all of a sudden you've got to face the stuff that you may not have been willing to face earlier, that may hit with an even greater, like almost like a whiplash kind of thing, because it's like, oh, we thought we had weathered this storm okay, but we forgot there were these other storms on the horizon. So that's one of my concerns that I have. I think especially for a lot of churches that have been afraid of technology and have a lot of the constituencies like Christine was talking about, where, we don't want to be doing the Zoom thing. We don't want to be embracing new technology. And so that's just sort of a concern of mine for a lot of our churches.
Yeah, I think very insightful.
I really think that goes back to the identity of the church. One of the things that I have found is that the identity hasn't diminished with the lack of meeting. I'm not sure why, but my folks, sorry about that, but my folks really are very identified with their congregation. And in fact, I've seen that express itself in very meaningful ways in these months of separation. So I'm Yeah, I get what you're saying, Riddick. I'm just finding that I'm surprised at how much, first of all, how much they miss meeting. I think I don't know why I don't miss meeting that much, but you know, I'm an introvert and I can be alone a lot. But they really miss meeting, and they're missing some of the aspects of that. And my fear is that the singing part of our worship is going to be a lot longer coming than the meeting together of our worship. And that is such an integral part of who we are. And in this congregation, it's just big. It's just, that is a deal breaker for some people, I think, in their souls. And it's not in their thinking, it's in their souls. They want to sing.
Sure.
And the choir wants to sing, and all of that stuff. That's where I worry a bit. So we will have to reframe that as we move together without that aspect of what we can do.
I think
go ahead.
I would encourage church boards to simply take those 5 core functions of church and to ask, are we doing something in each one of those? It's probably not a time we need to escalate and just ramp up and go crazy with being church, but are we worshiping? Are we doing something with worship? Doing something with disciple development and serving neighbors and so on? If we can do one thing with each of those 5 right now, that's probably pretty good. And that, I think by approaching it that way, we don't want to overwhelm ourselves or try too much, but we also want to do what's essential or core to being church. And I hope there's a window in there where those 5 core functions can give us enough guidance to help us say yes, but also to say no, that we don't have to do everything in the world right now. As you know, again, capacity, a lot of people are just struggling with how to keep their kids in school right now, or they're looking for a job or for a second job because part of their job went away. And, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs again. So it's a great time to identify what's essential to being church. There are some things that are core for us, but there was a whole bunch of other stuff that was superfluous, so to speak, before. Then the other thing I would mention is what we've done with ReShape is create a process around those 7 key moves, and it's a small group process, and where it's an intentional guided way to engage these questions we're talking about. I would not encourage a church to do it when they still can't be sufficiently in person. Like right now might not be the time to start using this process, but I would hope it'd be sometime like January might be a good time, and it all depends on your context and on your people and so it's all very contextual. But I hope by January, one of 2 things will happen. Possibly we can meet in person in larger groups than where we are now. That would be ideal. That would be ideal. But then secondly, if we can't, it's been going on for 3/4 of a year by then. And I think by then, I hope people would have the attitude, well, we just need to get on with it, whatever our circumstances are. And, you know, even if they're not going to change for another 6 months, we need to just get on with it and do the best we can with what we had to work with. So I think people would probably be poised by then to engage these questions we're talking about in a guided, directed sort of way. And I think that's where processes can be helpful to us that are sequential, that are structured, that help walk us through these, because otherwise we just sort of get lost, and it's so fluid and everything's moving so quickly. So that's my 2 cents worth on that. Other questions and comments? We got a couple minutes left.
I was just interested in what Angelica might have to share, given what Mark was talking about with the Maslow's hierarchy. My experience at the seminary is that it's impacted students of color Latinx students, our African American students, much more profoundly than white students, just because of resources and family issues and stuff like that. And I was just wondering if Angelica might have anything to offer to us in terms of how it's impacting her ministry.
Sure. Hi, I apologize for being a little late today. I was actually coming from a different meeting with Faith in the City that the Northwood Baptist holds during lunch hour. They had Forsyth County school people talking about just what you just described, Riddick, about education and how it affects minorities in the area. So it was just a lot of faith people that want to help cover whatever breach that technology is having in our kids of color. So on my part, I'm the leader, I'm the pastor at Estamos Unidos, which is a fairly new Hispanic ministry here in Southside Winston-Salem. And yes, it's very different than any traditional congregation that has been, I think, described here in this group. We have to pretty much reinvent ourselves again, because this ministry was new and emerging ministry. So it's very different than just pews and pulpit and all that type of church. But with this virus and during this time, we have to see pretty much a different type of need than when we started because of the people that we serve. So we serve first generation Hispanics, which language is a barrier. Technology, it's a huge, difficult, what's the word? The word in English. It's difficult for them to just read technology and much more if parents have younger kids, that they have to be the teacher nowadays, and they have to be the technology, the IT person in the household, and on top of either working or, you know, the different social and background culture that comes with it. So we are trying to help at least the families from within our ministry in providing some kind of education that covers that, like either technology or, you know, continue with the language, the ESL, continue with reaching out to other community agencies that they're doing similar things. So for us, when we went back to, when we started the pandemic, it was hard for me to see how can I reach this community if they cannot be reached through technology. So phone calls were fine, but it's not the same than just, you know, seeing each other, and especially because this community, it's all about families. And it's not just one person in households. It's, you know, probably one or two adults with multiple children. So just having a space to bring everybody together was really hard to not see. There were a lot of people that called me that, when are we coming back together? And it's been just really hard. But we are trying to, I mean, I started teaching during my Wednesday videos. We're active on Facebook, and I just upload videos, and I started saying, what is church? How the church has started, and talk about the New Testament and picturing, you know, that what church is. And I know there's different, you know, approaches with different churches, but for us, I think it was very comforting to know that, you know, not being together in the same room does not mean that we're not a community. That doesn't mean that, you know, we're not church. And just, you know, encouraging. I know that there is a lot of loss, not only with what the virus have taken from our families during this time, but just actual loss like death and grief and those type of things that for this new ministry have been, difficult for me to also manage and reaching out to them. So it's been very interesting. I try to collaborate with other people and see what other people are doing, how are they implementing or reinventing their reach out, because that's what it's mostly about in this ministry. So we're trying online programs, but we know that the majority of our people will not take advantage of that. So we're really trying to discern, our next steps, but continue to work, and we continue to have conversations that I think help me into bringing discernment into my board and to people that would like to continue doing things, because that's another thing, being the only one this staff, I guess, position. A lot of my volunteers have decided not to participate either because of technology issues, or just because they're in that sensitive age group too, that they cannot be in interaction with other people. So that has been difficult for us too. But I think it's just very interesting to hear and to learn from one another what has been happening in our churches and in our congregations. So yeah, I don't know if that covered Richard's question, but that's what's been happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm aware that it's close to our witching hour, 2 p.m. I don't know if anybody has any last comments. Mark, your book, I assume, is available on Amazon, perhaps where all good books are sold. I don't, other places, but I know I ordered it from Amazon while we were talking. So,
bless you, bless you.
So I'll let you know. I actually think it may have some good usefulness for some of our planning we're doing for our upcoming legislative assembly. Because, each church kind of needs to have these conversations, but we also need to kind of have this conversation as a province too. So there's a lot of interesting application for what you're saying. And I appreciate your taking the time to spend it with us today.
Yeah, it's great to see you all and reconnect with you. And thank you for who you are and what you're doing and making a difference in the world. So great to be with you.
I will say that Mark also has occasionally some clergy cohorts going. It's a good place to spend some of your continuing ed money, maybe some of your Lily money. And Mark is great about sort of customizing a thing. So, just because it's not listed on his website doesn't mean that it's not something that we couldn't figure out, ways that we could get a little cohort together or something. So there's lots of possibilities there. But alrighty. Well, I thank you all for being with us. And Mark, take care. Let's talk soon.
All right. I will send you the PowerPoint too.
That sounds great.
Others want it.
Wonderful. All right. Everyone have a wonderful day. We'll see you.
Thanks so much. Good to see you.
See you in a Zoom room soon.